I saw Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse at what may have been its first screening here in Australia. Here is my spoiler-free review. Just so you know where I'm coming from with this review, I've seen the first Spider-Verse movie, Into the Spider-Verse, 46 times. And no, that's not an estimate, that's actually counted. And I'll be seeing Across the Spider-Verse tomorrow night again with my son. If I feel the need to give an updated review, like a second review or a spoilers review or something, I will do that. This review will be entirely free of spoilers, but not for the first one. If you haven't seen the first one and you're considering watching this movie, don't do that. Also, don't watch this review. And yes, I know the whole Spider-Man reboot, multiverse, universe thingy gets super confusing for people. That's totally fair enough. I don't fully understand it myself. I only really know the Spider-Verse films well, the first one very well, and now I've seen the second one. But this is the sequel to the film that came out in 2018, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And I don't normally review these kinds of blockbuster, mainstream, large-budget films. The reason I'm doing this one is firstly that Australia got it a day earlier than the States, which is cool, so maybe someone might actually watch my review. And two, obviously, having seen the first one so many times, I know it basically frame by frame. I feel like I'm in a decent place to review this one. And last thing I'll say before we get into the actual review is that most of the times that I've watched the first movie were this year, like 42 of the times. I've been watching it like 3 to 4 times a week for the last 12 weeks. So yeah, I was kind of anticipating this sequel quite a lot. Now, I was doing it to learn Spanish.
Esto es lo máximo.
So most of the times I've seen it, I've actually watched the Spanish version of it, the Spanish voiceover.
Sí, exacto. Hey, come on.
But if watching the same film 42 times to learn a language doesn't appeal to you, but learning a language does appeal to you, then maybe you should check out StoryLearning, which is a great way to learn a language without having to memorize word lists and do stuff like that, which doesn't really work anyway. That's not how language learning works. They have courses in 11 or maybe even 12 or 13 languages now. I'm not exactly sure. Check out the links, see what you can find there. If it sounds like something that'd be interesting to you, obviously you using those links does help me out, so thank you. And now to Across the Spider-Verse, and maybe I've been procrastinating a little bit with actually talking about the film because it's a lot. There's just a lot to bring into this review, and I'm not going to cover anywhere near all of it. You basically just want to know whether it's worth your time, and the answer is a resounding yes. If you've seen the first one and you liked it, you should absolutely be watching this film. However, I don't think it's as good as the first one. Now, is that a surprise? Not really. Very few sequels are ever as good as the first one, especially when the first one was that good. However, I also don't think it's as good as it could have been. One big thing that I've got to name here is that it's really half a film. So and I think the woman sitting next to me, were not really surprised when the film kind of ended and hadn't at all resolved or anything. But a few people in the cinema were like, oh, come on, when it said, like, returning, what do they say? To be continued, in other words. Don't know why I forgot them. But someone just to my right a little bit was extremely disappointed with that. And they obviously didn't know that there was a third film next year. So I don't think it's a spoiler to say that this is really half a film. And does it feel like there's any kind of arc in this film? I don't think so, really. But I'm also not opposed to that. I don't mind the idea of a, 290-minute or 300-minute film just coming out in 2 parts. I would rather they do that than rush things into the film and try to finish it in a way that it's clearly not meant to be. But it also makes this film extremely hard to review because it's not finished. So it probably won't come as a surprise to you that I felt that this movie moved quite slowly. And not just slowly, but without direction. There was 10 minutes at the start that I felt like and yes, I'm with this movie, I'm down with what's happening, I'm liking this. And then it just kind of stopped for like half an hour, 40 minutes, until at least the first hour total of the film was up. You just feel like you're kind of wandering around, not really doing anything important. There's a bit of a hint of a villain, but it's unclear of what they want and what kind of villain they're going to be. It just labors a bit, and that's disappointing after the first one, which had a lot more to explain. The first one actually had more to cover because we were brand new to this universe, but the first one is just bang, 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 and you always feel like you're getting through that story, and it's always enjoyable even before you've really started the story. It feels like it gets very quickly to Miles being bitten by the spider and becoming Spider-Man and replacing the old Spider-Man, etc., etc. Whereas this one, you're just like, okay, where are we going? What's going on? Another thing is that although some of it felt like it was made for people like me who know the first film really, really well, other parts of it recapped the first film entirely. Just like, oh, here, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. It was very obvious that they were just recapping for the people who'd forgotten or for the people who hadn't seen it. And that always feels sucky to me because it's like, if you haven't seen it, that's your fault. You can't come into the sequel and expect it to make sense. It felt very much like a studio decision to like, oh, hang on, what about the people who don't know about the first one? I don't need to go on about it. I just thought that some of the first 20 minutes or so was catered to people who hadn't seen the film. And obviously, as someone who knows it so well, it's frustrating. It just didn't feel necessary. But at the same time as me saying that the first half of this film felt a bit directionless and just a bit wishy-washy and vague, it also is so much film. Every frame is just soaked with art. I mean, I read that there were over 1,000 artists working on this, and I'm not surprised at all, because I also read that the first film, when they sort of divided the length of time by the length of the art spent on it, it's something like a week per second. And to make a film this long, because Across the Spider-Verse is really, really long, you have to go, well, there has to be 1,000 artists on it, otherwise they would never get it finished. And so it's just a lot, and it felt like in all that, they're kind of hoping that you won't care that the story isn't very clear and we don't know where we're going. It kind of felt like they're just hoping that you'll go, wow, look at that art. But these days, films look really good. And I'm not saying that Across the Spider-Verse is not a step up from the first one in terms of how it looks. It probably is, but like, we've gotten used to just being wowed visually by so many films. And I don't think this film had enough art in it to make up for the fact that it doesn't have a story. It doesn't not have a story. The first half feels like it doesn't have a story. And I think you'll agree that no amount of artistic wowiness would do that. Like, we're not in an art gallery. We're here to watch the film, and we're here to see these characters that we know and in some cases love. It's like when those don't come off the screen in the way that we feel they should, I'm not impressed by the art. I'm just like, can we please get to the story? And again, I want to stress, I know I'm going to get comments saying, oh, there was story, you just weren't picking it up. There is a story. There is something happening. It's moving towards something, but it's very hard to tell what. And the emotional impact of a lot of scenes that felt like they could have been really emotional and like, just really strong, were kind of weakened by me thinking, where is this going? Why is this important right now? Which is kind of to be expected because I am talking about the first half of a film that is already half. So I'm actually talking about the first kind of 60 minutes of a film that's like 4 hours long. But it still has to work as a film that we're watching now. It just didn't, the first hour just isn't that great. I'm not going to say it's not good because it's still like flippin' amazing. Spider-Verse is just an amazing creation. Now, I deliberately didn't read or watch anything to do with this film before going into it. I didn't watch any of the trailers. I deliberately didn't read any discussion about who was who or what's going to happen or anything like that. I wanted to go in as fresh as possible, despite the fact that I've seen the first one that many times. But I have seen some little chatter that I didn't mean to about like who is the actual villain and what's going on and what's their motivation and stuff. That's where I feel like this film's kind of weak. There is a villain. In fact, there's kind of a couple, depending on how you define villain. And I think that's actually meant to be a bit of a theme. Like, well, who is the real villain? How do you know that your heroes are actually heroes and not villains? Remember that good villains are always the heroes of their own story. So I think that's actually sort of a theme that they're going for that plays out more and more as we get further into the film. However, that does come with the trade-off of, like I said, sort of the lack of direction in the first half, because there's no like good guy, bad guy. There's just a bunch of, oh, and then there's this person and they're doing this, and then there's this person and they're doing this. And so probably, this is my guess and my hope, the third film, Beyond the Spider-Verse, will be better because it will be clear, like, this person has this motivation, we set that up in Across the Spider-Verse, and this person's doing this, and Miles is trying to do this. It still just resulted in just a bit of a fragmented experience in the first. Now, I do think that multiverse films, especially when they start actually bringing in the other universes, always suffer from this because you're like, well, if everything's possible, why is this the story we're following? I just think it's difficult to put the idea on screen of like, all this stuff can happen all at the same time and it's all part of this connected multiverse and everything, everywhere, all at once, to name another multiverse film. But by the way, you're only meant to care about this thing in this place now. It feels strange. And I always do this, so I'm just going to break my own review right in the middle here to say, I did enjoy this film. There were moments of this film that I almost wanted to like tap the woman on the shoulder. She was sitting next to me. I didn't know her, but I almost wanted to go like, yes, like this is so flippin' good. But most of it wasn't like that. The first film, the whole thing was like that to me. This is just a more disjointed experience. I think I will actually enjoy it more second, third, fourth time because it felt like too much for one viewing. One thing that I was really looking forward to going into this film and was rewarded was Daniel Pemberton's score. Daniel Pemberton did the score for the first one as well. Good film scores are one of those things that the more you listen to them, especially if you listen to them a lot, like 46 times, you start to hear things that you're like, wow, they thought that through. They really, really, really thought that through. And so whenever there's even vague hints of various people's themes in this film, I'm ready for it because I know the themes. And Daniel Pemberton is absolutely nailing the film score game at the moment. And it's weird because most people have probably never heard of him. Obviously, film composers are not the most famous people in the industry, but like everyone's heard of Hans Zimmer, Stephen Price you might have heard of, John Williams obviously a little bit ago, but like Daniel Pemberton I think is a name to look out for. Excellent, excellent score. Like I said, I don't want to pan this movie. It is good. It's just that I felt the good moments were all too late in it. There's one particular thing that's like right at the end, and it was pretty clear that it was going to form the end because like we were a long way into the movie and I was like, how much longer can this movie go for? So it was pretty clear that that was going to be the end of the film. But when it happened, I was like, this is so flippin' good. We needed this a bit earlier. I just felt like in the first half there could have been a little bit less faffing about, and we could have got to that second half and that awesome world that I'll only just say is very dark. We just could have done that sooner, and I think it would have made a better overall experience. It also would have been a shorter film, possibly, and there's also a moment that I'll be deliberately vague about that it feels like should get a lot of time in the third film. It should. However, I'm not sure that it will. I just have a feeling that it's going to be a moment that pitch meetings will be like, well, I bet that's going to be hard to get out of. Actually, it'll be super easy, barely an inconvenience. I feel like that's how the third film is going to start. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that the third film really delves down into that world because it was flippin' awesome. Now, I'm not against films being longer. I mostly think that a lot of films are too short. Like they should have had 2 or 3 more scenes to make us really feel an emotional investment with these characters. But I do feel like they padded this one a little bit. And generally in these trilogies, and especially when it's a one movie coming earlier and then 2 and 3 made like at the same time and coming out very close to each other, the third film is generally the longest. Now, obviously, this could be an exception, but I'm not aware of many cases where the third film is not at least as long as the second and first. So that would mean 140-minute, maybe even 150 or 60-minute third film. That is crazy long for a cartoon. Now, I know that calling it a cartoon is not really fair, but like in my screening at least, there was a kid, like an actual like 7 or 8-year-old, and it's clearly not actually meant for kids. They're obviously getting away with like a lower rating than the audience that it's actually meant for. And I just kind of think almost 5 hours for the 2 sequels put together. Like, yeah, the first one was a great film. It really was. But that sort of feels like layering on the icing a bit thick. Now, I am super pleased for everyone involved in this film that they got to work on something this big, and you know, the art that's in it is amazing, the music is amazing, there's lots of great stuff to see here. But the Across the Spider-Verse, it really didn't have that same sense of magic that the first one did. And it also kind of lost its realism for a bit. Now, I know that sounds dumb because obviously they're not realistic films, but I could kind of buy everything in the first film, despite being as crazy as it was, because of the way it looks. It looks like a comic book. I could buy the world. This one does not look like that. It sucks you out of that world with various, like sometimes even real footage. There's quite a famous actor who kind of shows up in the middle of it. It just pulls me out of that and makes me think, oh yeah, like that guy, oh that guy's in it, and now we're seeing this, and also that universe is connected. It felt a little bit too meta. It felt a little bit too much like just a commentary on film and the state of the world, and maybe even AI to an extent. There is like a very vague hint of AI and the impact it's going to have on our world in the next 20 years or so. There was a lot of stuff that didn't really feel necessary. There was a lot of stuff that was great, but you know that from the first one. If you've seen the first one, you've seen most of what is great about this one, except for a few moments that really were the first one's greatness recaptured. So it's totally worth seeing for that. However, don't buy any of this talk that you see that it's like the best film ever. I don't think it's as good as the first one. So that's one film that's better than it. It's also not as good as like tons of other movies that have been made. It's a good film. I hope I haven't been too negative on it. Please go and see it. Go and see it at the movies. If you're watching this review later, don't pirate it. Go and watch it properly. You know, this film costs a ton to make, and artists and musicians and stuff get paid to do that. So watch this film properly. And yeah, if you're interested in learning a language, check out the links for StoryLearning in the description. That's it from me. Bye.